My dad ended up committing suicide. Our world kind of just turned upside down very quickly. Even when we grew up in care, no one really was there for us. They're still not there now. I'd been told that I wouldn't ever be accepted because of what I'd been through. I've been to university, completed my education, got a job, run my own business.
Hi, welcome to Changing Suits. My name's Bal.
And my name's Taj.
On this week's episode, we've got like a bit of a part two. So a few weeks ago, you might remember that we had Jussi Sidhu on from the Indian Body Coach. And during the episode, me and Taj were like, where is your wife? We see her on Instagram with you. Where is she? And he said something really sweet. And it was like, she deserves a whole episode on her own. And we were like, okay, then let's get her on. And that's exactly what we've done for this episode. So today we've got Jussi Sidhu with us from the Indian Body Coach. And we'll be talking about her journey after foster care, because this is something that we haven't really discussed on our podcast. So firstly, hiya Jussi, how are you today?
Yeah, good, thank you. Thank you for having me on. And it's been so lovely meeting you both.
Thank you very much.
Like through the camera.
Well, of course, everything's online. We don't do anything in face-to-face anymore. Now, like I said, Juggy was very complimentary about you. I was like, oh, that's so cute. In regards to
that very often, so.
And I really don't say that very often. I'm very not very touchy-feely like that. But he did mention a few things in regards to yourself and just raising awareness about the journey you've been through. So I'm going to let you take over from here and just give a bit of an introduction as to where you were and where you've come to. And I know that's a very broad way of putting it, but if you start off and we'll take it from there.
Yeah, I mean, where do I start? But I guess, so growing up, I didn't have the normal family setting that you probably imagine most Indian families. You know, the mum, the dad's there and the children are well taken care of and the foundations are built for, you know, bright future. For us, it was very different. As much as we had some really great memories and like really lovely experiences, our world kind of just turned upside down very quickly. And my dad, I'm trying to keep this as brief as possible, but my dad ended up committing suicide, and this was in our family home, so he hung himself, and it was a family member that found him. I remember being given the news, and it was just, as a young child, it was just hard to comprehend. You know, you kind of think, has that actually happened? You watch all these movies, or you have these dreams or nightmares or whatever it might be, and
really awkward. Yeah.
You think, oh no, like maybe they're still out there somewhere. And
Jussi, can I ask, how old were you when this happened?
Do you know what? It's funny. It's a bit funny that you asked that, because I always say to people I don't like to remember like dates and ages. Like I have a rough idea, but I don't like to fixate on a date. You know, people go, oh, this is the anniversary of this, or I was exactly this age, to like down to the month.
But you were pretty young, you're saying?
Yeah, I'd say I was around 7 or 8 when this happened. But I don't, at that age, and I know from having my own psychology support to discuss that trauma, that actually at that age you can't comprehend death. And I think the way that it was put to me at the time, like nowadays, that I know that when you explain that to a child, you quite point blank say, that person's dead, they've died. And it's quite bluntly put so that the child can understand it. But for me, I was told, oh, we're going to go see your dad, he's in hospital. And I remember walking down the corridors and something just not feeling right, and actually weren't taken to like a hospital room. We were going out towards this other building where they keep the bodies, of course. And I remember.
So, were you expecting? Can I ask? In that case, were you expecting him, obviously, to be alive? Obviously, not very well, because you think, okay, in hospital they might not be very well. Is that what you were expecting at that time? Then
I just knew from like the adults around me that something wasn't right, and then I think I just knew. Like I was taking the same route to when I saw my nanny, who had passed away like the year before from cancer. So I was thinking, are we seeing someone else potentially? like, what's going on? Or like, are we just taking a slight detour?
Is it more feelings? Do you remember more feelings of what happened because people weren't really saying anything? It was more about, okay, there's something quite not right. Do you feel?
Yeah, because there were a lot of tears and just no one really explaining anything or what was going on very clearly. And I think I was just in my own thoughts. For anyone that knows me, I'm quite, I just absorb things, take it in. I'm quite calm, and that's how I've always.
I was going to say, even on this podcast, as we've been talking, I can see how calm you are. I'm like, yeah, we have problems because I'm like this all the time, and you're like my husband. He's a bit calmer as well, so that comes across. To be fair, Jussi.
No, I just remember writing. I was told, write a note for your dad, basically, and just thought, okay. And I just remember writing like my name and my siblings' names down on a piece of paper, which actually when I then went into the room and saw him, I think that was when it hit me. Like, he's still, sorry.
In regards to, obviously you've got siblings as well. How many siblings do you have, Jussi?
So I've got an older sister and I've got 2 younger brothers. We're all about a year apart in age, and we're all really close. Like, even if we don't see each other for ages, it's just like no other day. And I remember this even when we grew up in care. Like, we were split up from my brothers. My brothers didn't have each other, actually. They were just on their own in a home. But me and my sister luckily had one another.
Can I ask you something? So we've jumped from obviously from you going to see your dad.
Mm.
You did go into care. Can you just talk us very briefly through how you ended up in care? So was your mum around at that point, or what happened?
Mentally wasn't in a good place, wasn't fit enough to continue taking care of us. I think there was a lot of red flags that probably should have been picked up on sooner during that time because we were at home. And I don't think anyone really thought about the aftercare. Like, do you know, with families, like, everyone's there during the funeral period and then everyone kind of just disperses afterwards.
Yeah.
And, I remember she was still having to go to work. So we were either waiting in the car, sneakily going in through like the security barriers, like hiding in the car, and then sat in there waiting during her whole shift, or,
Oh, so she used to go in. You went in the car with her while she was at work?
Yeah, I remember certain occasions where that would happen. I remember being left with people. I don't think she was quite mentally in a good place because we were left in like really bad situations with these random people, and like really
lost, isn't it? Yeah, lost.
And then I think maybe she just felt like she didn't have anyone else for support. But then also, I remember we were left home alone a lot of the time as well. Like, we were little kids. I was with my youngest brother. Like, and I don't just mean home alone and you're in a cozy home and there's food there and there's food left for you. I mean, at that age, anything could happen. My youngest brother, he would have been, around Caleb's age, like probably 4 or 5 at the time, and maybe a bit younger, yeah. And
can I ask you Jussi, can I just ask you something? So in regards to, because obviously on the podcast we recorded with Jaggy, one thing we really picked up, and we sort of mentioned it before we started recording, was the fact that he's very open in regards to the mental health struggles that he had. And that was something me and Taj picked up. Oh, it's very refreshing for someone to openly say, yes, I had depression. Yes, I struggled with XYZ. With the fact that you've been through so much at such a young age, did your family ever talk about any mental health problems that your dad had, or now you're saying that your mum had? Was that ever part of that conversation?
No, I think I know more about my mum because obviously I've seen records, I've seen like the reports from like the social services and whatnot. But I think with my dad, I look back at photos and I think I can see the sadness in his eyes. He just looks empty, and I just think, like, how did no one pick up on that? No one was talking about it then. No one really knew what to do, where to turn. And I think, like, he was from India, so his way of thinking, I think it was just kind of his way out. And we'd heard so many things like, oh, he was selfish for leaving you 4 kids. And, and this was coming from an immediate family member that was saying this in front of us as kids. And I remember listening to her saying this stuff, and sometimes it does make you question, it does make you wonder. But now I've got a better understanding as I've got older. I think, and being a mother myself, I think no one would ever do that. When you have children, you do everything you can to protect them. So he must have obviously felt like he had no other way out. Like, he must have just been in such a bad place that he felt like he had no choice.
Did he have anyone else? Did he have anyone else that came over with him from India, or was it just himself? that came over? Did you have any brothers, sisters?
Yeah, I've started to realise over time, like I'm one of those, I kind of like look at both sides, and I have quite like a fair view. It's not just, this is what I think and that's it. And even now, like, my dad's side, my dad was the one to bring all of them over work. I remember afterwards, like that was them. They were still contributing like from their wages to support them when they brought them over. But no one really was there for us afterwards. Like, people have messaged me going, "Where was your family? Where was your family after this?" And my dad's side, quite honestly speaking, they weren't there. They're still not there now. Like, you would surely check in. These are your sons or your brother's children that you
Can I just ask, it's really interesting. It's interesting you've said that, because we've had funerals, and 100% agree. At that period, everyone's there, and all of a sudden, once the funerals happen, you're right. Now thinking about it, everyone just gets on in their own little world. And what's amazing about what you've just said, because in the South Asian community, the community is such a massive thing. So I'm just shocked in hearing you say right now that afterwards, there was yourself and your siblings, and no one checked in and said, and especially with your mum as well, if there was some, mental health issues there as well, that no one then checked in and say,
yeah, they used to go, "Oh, we tried to find you. Well, actually, it wouldn't be that hard to find us, because we were in you would have just had to contact the local social services. You knew where we lived. That's obviously where we would end up. They would have some sort of trace. You'd be able to get in touch with us. Everyone else managed to find." So, like, looking back, I'm just so, like, I used to just have a really fair view and just took in both sides. But then actually now, and when I see the reports, actually, I just think, did they think that I would never ever look at these reports that actually do disclose the truth, that they actually didn't want to take us in, and that actually they wanted to be paid, or the fact that they were like, "No, we'll take the girls, just not the boys," or whatever it was. Like, for me, from my experience and from what I know, like, if you love someone, you do everything you can for them. And for me, nothing else matters. If I barely had anything and just about got by, and something had happened to any of my siblings' children, I would be the first to step in and go, "I'm here. I will do everything that I can do to take care of them, and I will treat them exactly like my own."
So do you feel they just disowned you, basically? It was okay.
I think it was more seen as, this is going to be a cost, or what about when it comes to getting them married off, because they're very like old school traditional Indians. And I think, we faced a lot of comments as well growing up, like, no one, who's going to want to marry them now? Everyone's going to know what's happened here, and they've, like, because we've been in care, and just even like the educational side. Like, before we got on this call, I know we touched upon that. Like, I've been to university, completed my education, got a job, running I say my own business, but running a business with Juggy. And, a lot of people just don't get to that point when they've been through care. A lot of people don't make it through school because of what they've been through.
Jussi, can I ask, just like I said, and I just want to touch on this very briefly, because we've discussed prior to the podcast, you really want to talk about the successes you've had. Just very briefly, in regards to being in care, why is it, what you've just said, that people don't expect someone that's been in care to be as successful as I've been? What is it about care that people assume that is the case?
I think everyone has this assumption that if you've been in care, that you're somehow the problem or the troublesome one. And from what I know, like, sometimes people are put into care because actually their main carer might be unwell and can't take care of them. They might need some respite. There might be other issues going on. So for some people, it can be temporary. For some, it's long term. There's various issues, but I think everyone has this perception that this child's been through some sort of trauma, or they're really troubled and not wanted, and the person that's going to come walking through that door is going to be a handful to deal with. And is it really worth it?
I mean, it's interesting you say that, because as soon as you said that, what I remembered was, sometimes you see on the movies, they've had kids from care, and that's the that's what was thrown up in my head when you said that.
Tracy Beaker.
So the media,
I resonated with Tracy Beaker a lot growing up. It was like the only thing that I could kind of relate to, because there was nothing out there. No one spoke about this stuff. No one really back then. I think the Indian community was such a tight-knit community. People leaned on each other for support. Now everyone's so like far away from one another, trying to do things on their own, trying to, just in their own.
But that's the shocking thing about the situation where you've said, in those days people leaned on each other, and unfortunately you're in this situation where you couldn't lean on the people that you most needed to.
I think people have this.
My shock, I suppose.
Yeah, I think people have this perception as well that actually this doesn't happen in Indian families or this culture, but actually,
to be honest, when Jaggi talked about fostering, and I thought, oh my God, that's different. We haven't really heard much about fostering, and you are right. In the South Asian community, you don't really hear about children that have gone into care, and there are children that have gone into care, like obviously your own journey. Do you think there just isn't enough awareness about children in the South Asian community in care?
I wouldn't say that there's not enough awareness. I think people are just kind of quite quick to think that it actually doesn't happen in our communities and that their support isn't actually needed, and that these things don't really go on, but actually they do. Like they've not always got another like family to lean on. People don't always step in like with us. So I don't think it's necessarily that. I think there's so much out there these days. People see so much. There's so much on social media as well. I think they just generally don't expect this sort of stuff to happen in like the Indian families, and they expect there to be so much support. But for us, we had, what if for some people one parent passes away at let's say the age that we were young kids. And this is when you need your parents most. But for us, it's not like we had another parent to lean on either. We had no one. So, yeah, I think
is your mum around, or what was the next thing? Because obviously she went through mental health issues herself, and from the sounds of it, the social services then got involved, which is why you went to care. Where was your mum at this point in the journey then?
It's really hard for me to say because I don't know. I was in care, so I don't really know.
So they didn't update you about what was happening with your mum? It was your own
we weren't together as siblings either. Like I said, me and my sister were together. Like both my brothers, bless them, they didn't have each other either. They were both in separate care homes, because obviously it depends on whether that home can take on one child, 2 children, 3 children. Like it varies, and that's why I think it's important to have these discussions and talk about this sort of stuff. And it's not as though they don't go to family first either. Like my mama adopted us, and eventually, but he had to go through a bit of a process for that.
Now, in regards to where you are now, you've got your own family. Can you just talk us through it? So you came out of care because your mama adopted you. How was your life from there onwards?
There was a lot, I think. There was a lot that we still had to deal with. Like like I said, people would just have these conversations in front of you. And then I think there was also this worry, like, would anyone ever want to marry us? Because it wasn't one of those where, you could go and just do whatever you wanted. I think there was a lot of expectations from other family members making comments that he then felt like, okay, I need to make sure I do a good job and bring these girls up and make sure no one can't say anything. And that was a lot of pressure on him, because we had really young uncles. He was, I think, in his early 20s himself. So, he was still starting off in life. So, yeah, I think...
That's amazing in itself that he was so young and that he took all 4 of you on, was it? Or
me and my sister on, because my brothers then eventually went back to my mum. I think as well, and then I think we could sense that, and we would pick up on little things that would be said. I think people forget how clever kids can actually are, and like how much more they actually understand what's going on. And it doesn't matter if you're speaking in like code Punjabi or whatever it might be. Like kids still pick up,
which isn't actually code, because they just say it.
Yeah, but like it's even like family dynamics, and this is why I'm really careful. Because of what I've been through, I'm really careful with my kids. That I remember, even when there were toxic family members, you were still taught to go in, you be you do your thing and make sure no one can say anything about you, and you would know the dynamics between different family members, even as kids. And I don't know if you guys can relate to this. So now, if I obviously there's always someone in the family that's, let's face it, let's be real here. There's always
the widow, the weird family member,
someone. And like for me, I don't want to teach my kids that that's something that you have to kind of be okay with and put up with. You don't have to, because that's not right. So this is a lot with Juggy's support. Like this took a lot because I've always been a big people pleaser because of, I think, all the comments and everything growing up. And he really taught me to kind of go, no, and like set boundaries and do what's right for us and our kids. And that's made such a big difference.
Can I ask you something on that point, Jussi? Because obviously you were with your mum, Muddy, who was, like you've said, quite young. Did he do the traditional, like you said, go in, say hello to everyone, and that people pleasing? Because I completely understand, but me and Taj are complete people pleasers, so that's a whole journey in itself. But were you brought up very traditionally, even with your mum, Muddy, in regards to that side?
It's just how people have always been taught, like, oh, you know, when you see that there's certain dynamics or situations, and you still just like you pick up on everything, or even if someone's got an issue, like you just carry on as normal, but it's like nothing's ever really dealt with. So, or like no one actually says what they're thinking, and then I think that just makes things worse. So actually I think it's just something that we picked up on a lot as a kid. Like a lot of things that I will do, you guys will do in your day to day will be things that you've learned over the years, whether someone's actually said that to you or whether it's stuff that you've just picked up on in that environment. And that's why for me it's really important that the boys know that it's okay to set boundaries and that you don't have to conform to certain things, and you need to protect your own self.
So in your journey in care, how long were you in care for then?
Gosh, again, I don't know, but it was at least a couple of a year or two at least. I don't know. Again, I don't really remember.
I was going to say, Jussi, you're completely traditional because no one knows the age, no one knows how long everything is. If you ask anyone in India any of the stuff, they'd answer exactly what you do, as well, roughly this much time.
One's birthday is on like January the 1st, and whatever year.
Yeah, like everyone else.
And how was it being in care? The people that you met and the care homes that you went in, were they comforting? Was it a good place to be? Were they supportive?
Were you in a better place just from where you were?
Like you can always tell whether maybe it's just my gut. Like honestly, I'm not kidding you. My gut instinct always serves me well. I always say to Juggy, I just don't have a good feeling about this or that individual, and then I can't say I'm always right, but you know.
And then you're like, bloody right, and Juggy's like, damn it, she's right again.
You pick up on energy and things like that, and I feel like I genuinely am really good with that. Sometimes you learn the hard way, don't always get it right, don't always pick up on it, or you can't always quite put your finger on it. But I think maybe that's a lot to do with what I've been through and picking up on, do you know, like your body tunes in and you pick up on certain things. I sound like a bit of a crazy woman now, but
no, I agree with you. I'm totally on the energy thing. I
felt like, coming back to your question, you can tell, like I was at the emergency home that we first went into. Again, it just felt like nothing was really explained. We were just taken into offices late one evening. It was dark, and then put into a care home, and just didn't really understand what was going on. I was just thinking what's happened. And then also you don't say anything because instinctively you're protecting your family. So you won't say what's going on, even if something is going on. And
do you think that point is even more relevant within the South Asian community? Because now you've said that you do protect your family, you don't want them to get into trouble.
Without even being told, but you pick up on things that's what you kind of taught to do, keep things within the family, and it's not shared with anyone. Wouldn't you agree? I'm sure.
100%. 100%, yeah.
But I think, I think you can tell when people have genuine intentions and whether they're doing it because they care. And I really experienced that and felt that a lot actually growing up. Like the people that actually cared and were genuine, and the people that were just doing it for the money, I guess, because you do get paid for fostering.
I was going to say, I mean, there's quite a lot nowadays. I've seen posters of, look, we need foster carers. And that's over the last few years, I've noticed those posters going up quite a lot. What's your opinion on, and this might be a bit of a curveball, but South Asian people becoming foster carers? Do you think for kids that are in foster care that are from the South Asian community or any community, do you think it's easier for them to then be put with carers that are from the same community? Or do you not think that matters so much?
I think it does matter. I think it makes a big difference. We look at this stuff when they're placing you in care. Like back then, all those years ago, there wasn't really anyone around for us. We weren't placed in an Indian family, with an Indian family, sorry. So actually, we spoke fluent Punjabi. Our dad used to take us to the Gurdwara every Sunday and do swimming and the library. Like that was just his thing. That's a memory, like a core memory that I have with him. Like having the food, simple things like the cha, roti. My dad used to do this. Maybe people would think it's odd, like he'd do cornflakes, but with like Indian tea instead of.
Oh yeah, everyone does that. That's a normal Indian thing.
And then, but just little things like those home comforts. And actually, the emergency home we were placed in, honestly, I just don't think I'll ever forget. Like these are the little things that you don't forget. She went out away and bought a cookbook and learned to make roti and a sabji so that we felt at home. She was honestly,
that's really good. The fact that she took the energy to do that and go out there and try to make you home, like you were at home.
And then the other home, there was none of that really. It was just kind of
had the cornflakes with normal milk,
doing the bare minimum and doing their like I think it was like seen as a job basically. And you could really feel the difference between both families. Like not that I expected that, but you could just tell where each person's intentions were.
Can I ask you, Jussi, do you, in regards to, is there a certain amount of time, I suppose raising awareness for anyone that does potentially want to be a foster carer, is there a certain amount of time that are foster carers to that child for? Because if you liked being in that first home, how comes that wasn't extended and then you got moved to another home?
I'll come back to that in just a moment. I just feel like there's a few point that I want to mention. Like for us, we lost our Punjabi. It was like so broken afterwards in that period of time. You're not around people where you're continuing to use it. We hadn't been to the Gurdwara for ages. Like we just felt so completely out of touch with all of that. And then it was quite embarrassing afterwards when we came back and we were living with our mama and trying to communicate with our nana in Punjabi and things like that. And you just lose it all, and you lose it all so quickly. No one was ever arranging visits or for someone to come and take us to the Gurdwara or for, like, we had no Indian clothes to wear to things. It was like starting from scratch afterwards again when all of that did start to happen again.
How did you feel? Looking back, you're saying that you were a bit embarrassed. Were you embarrassed at that point where maybe you ended up going Gurdwara but you didn't have the Indian clothes? You as a child at that point, did you realise
we didn't get to do any of that when we were in care. And it's like we didn't even really get to see our brothers often. Like that's such a basic thing, but it had to kind of be planned. And on the odd occasion where we could see each other, like even getting to tie a rakhi on one another, like these little things that are so big, just not done. And that's why I do play like an ambassador role for Casa Fostering. It was something that we set up during the lockdown period. So they're out there to kind of drive that awareness and support carers with these things, because we know what that feels like. We know what the gap is. So it's just helping to improve that, because there's a lot of other children experiencing that as well.
Jussi, how often did you see your brothers then when you were in care then? Was it after a couple of weeks?
I think it would be months. It would be months. We wouldn't, and that was the thing, like even though we hadn't seen each other for months. So you can imagine the four of us were always together growing up. We were so close. And then, we hadn't seen each other for months. So I think I've always been one of those, like, even though we were in a really awful position and what we were going through was awful, I kind of always felt like, actually, I'm privileged still to be in this position because I've got clothes, I've got some sort of security on me. Like there were periods where we weren't going to school before, and I was like, and now I am going to school. Like it's like we're saying,
appreciating those things that perhaps you wouldn't have.
Yeah. And then whereas And then also thinking like, actually, me and my sister have got each other. The boys haven't got one another. They're completely alone in their care homes. Like, well, they've got no one to kind of lean on. What, are they okay? What's going on? So, and then not even just in our situation, but in general, like, I would always think there's always someone worse off in the world. Like, you've got to be like grateful regardless of your situation. And I think that was a bit of a coping mechanism as well, just to get through difficult periods.
Just one thing in regards to when you did meet up, because I think this is a really important point, and just so that we understand. When you did all four of you meet up, and then when you did, how did you feel when you were together?
Great. It just felt like we hadn't been apart. And I think that's that bond that you have. I don't think everyone has that. Generally speaking, I don't think everyone has that. But I think when you've been through some sort of hardship like this, it just kind of intensifies that even more. So yeah, maybe.
And are you still close now then, Jussi?
Yeah.
Are you still close to your siblings now? Yeah.
When you were with your mama and your brothers were with your mum, is that correct?
Were all four of you together when you your mama adopted you?
No. So it was me and my sister, and then they went to my mum eventually. And I think there were four of us. It is quite hard, and he was quite young. It's like a big responsibility in itself. And I think he kind of felt like, okay, actually, the boys will be okay, and I need to make sure that someone's there for the girls.
So your mama took you in. You're obviously having people come around. You're having that community feel. You said you did go to university then. So was your mama like most people in parental responsibility, pushing you girls to go and get that education because you've got to get married? Was it the same sort of process from that then on?
It was kind of just expected, really. Like, okay, finished school. What's next? College. What's next after that? But I always say to Juggy, I felt like I never really got to find myself, actually, because I did criminology at university. I did criminology because I always had a bit of interest. I always thought I wanted to go into child protection and, you know, help in that way. But actually, I went through a very intense process with the Met Police. I got through, finished all the stages, had my uniform fitting. And then actually I found out that I was pregnant with Jacob and no one wanted me to do the job. They had no, rather you not do the job at all. But it was a good experience. I think because there were so many gaps, I think it's just a system that needs more work. It's so flawed, and I think there's a lot more work that needs to be done. And I think I just felt like I just wouldn't want another child feeling the same or feeling let down or going through the same sort of situations, and knowing from my experience, like explaining things properly or explaining to them that actually, because we were offered psychology support, but we saw it as a bad thing. No one really properly explained it though. So actually looking back, I probably would have done that now. And actually, like it was actually Juggy again, who was the one that said to me, it wasn't until like my second year of university that I didn't realise I was actually going out with the intentions that I didn't want to drink, and then I find myself just drink so much, but I realised it was just to mask this pain. And this is the thing, like even when you have like go through some sort of trauma, you may seem fine for a bit, but it catches up with you at some point. And he was the one that actually helped and supported me and made me realise no one else around me really picked up on it. I don't know where I'd be if Juggy hadn't picked up on it. That was around the time that we actually met each other. And he helped me like realise that I actually need some support. And it's funny because actually when we met, and I think you just get this feeling with certain people, like when we met in a nightclub on a night out, and we had some mutual friends. So I think we'd kind of seen each other maybe a little bit on socials and maybe clicked.
A bit of social media stalking, nothing wrong with that. Carry on, Jussi.
We've actually admitted to one another, but you know, we met on this night out. Imagine everyone else is drinking, everyone else is dancing, everyone else is, you know, having fun with their friends, and me and him are just sat at the back having really deep conversations. And everyone else like, where are these two? What are they doing? We're just sat at the back whilst everyone else is having their fun, and I spoke to him about everything. And I think maybe an element of that was like, I'm just going to tell you everything, so either you accept me or you don't, because I think growing up for so long, I'd been told that I wouldn't ever be accepted because of what I'd been through. No one would ever want to marry me or whatever. And I think we just had this like undeniable connection with one another. It was like, no matter what, we're going to be together. Like, I think we both just knew from that moment. And actually, he never saw it as like, oh God, will my parents ever accept you? Or is this something that I want to get myself involved in? Or, you know, seeing someone as like tainted goods because they've not had the normal upbringing. But no, he was so good and supportive, and he's really helped me a lot with my growth. I won't admit this to him, so well, he'll hear me now.
It's fine. We'll keep it a secret. We're only going to publish this podcast. Go on, tell us, Jussi.
But no, honestly, he's really helped me grow as a person, because actually, when we first got together, I'd always feel like growing up, I always had to ask for permission to do this or that, or little things. It's not like we could just go out and we're going for a walk or whatever. So actually, he was just like, you're your own person, make your own decisions. Is that something you want to do? Why are you struggling to say no? Like, you're telling me you don't want to do that, but just tell that individual, like, no, it's somewhat like you can't do it. And it just really helped me become my own person, really.
I was going to say, with the fact that you've had that conversation, you were very open with each other, and it sounds like he's been very supportive. Have you then been strong enough? Because again, like I said, as people pleasers, it's really hard to say no. Have you got to that point where you can say no? Because otherwise, it's a tough one. It's a personality trait, isn't it?
Yeah, I realise that my biggest priority is my kids. I know that, but I also know that I need to take care of myself in order to put my kids first. And obviously with the work that we do, so with the coaches and everything, so I have the support of the team as well. And it's been so good for me, and like setting those boundaries again, like with what we do, it's not just nutrition and training. It's actually like dealing with these situations with like prioritizing your time, managing your time effectively, making time for yourself, and actually being present in the moment with your kids rather than just being there, but thinking about everything else as well that really, in fact, 5 years down the line or whatever, won't even matter. And then it's like actually just really making the most of these years, because soon they'll go. But yeah, I'd say Juggy and the team have helped me a lot with that.
Do you think your past and what you've been through has made you a better, or think about the steps that you take with your children, or maybe not the right words, but a better parent?
Yeah, I mean, we're all, I guess there's so many things out there, and when I see certain things, like, it really does affect me. It does still get to me. You know, I've had people make comments. It's funny that you say that. And actually a family member, never said it to my face, but hiding behind an account to say, actually, Jussi is the way she is because of what she went through as a child.
What, on social media?
As in a negative way. And for me, I just see that as, I saw it, I didn't react to it, didn't bother me, but actually, because I know...
I'd be like, you bitch!
But they were trying to do it in a negative way to bring me down. And I think I just see that as that person hasn't had the help that they need, or they're not happy in their own life, because no one would be there. If you're genuinely a happy person, you wouldn't be there bringing other people down. You wouldn't want to affect anyone in that way. So either you're just not a good person, or you're not happy in your own life. And that's it. And that's the line under it. But that's like one person out of the hundreds of messages I get from people saying like how helpful me talking about this or sharing little snippets has been for them, or that I've inspired them to look into fostering or whatever else it may be. But actually just being that voice for other people going through the same thing, or that have gone through the same thing. But I think for me, yes, I am who I am because of what I've been through in a positive way. That's made me like the empathetic person I am, like feel connected to certain things in certain situations, wanting to help other people. Not everyone can say that they're going out there every single day helping people, whereas I can say that I'm going out there and changing at least one person's life each day.
Can I just one more point, and before we wrap up, both yourself and Juggy are very, I know I said this earlier about Juggy, but even with yourself, you're going out and telling your story. What's made you strong enough to tell your story where other people might be hiding it somewhat? And everyone's got their own reasons for doing it, but why? Why are you telling people?
I think for me, growing up, I felt like I didn't have anyone to relate to. And I think I learned that during the pandemic as well, it became even more obvious, like how much more it's become quite a big thing and more help is needed. But actually what really helped me is like Juggy, like I really admire how Juggy just openly talks about his mental health. Like that.
I love you too. You just keep both talking about each other. I'm like, stop it.
Really scary sometimes. Like it takes a lot, and you do get nervous because you're opening up your wounds, your past, you're reliving things and telling your story, and you're making yourself vulnerable and open to whatever it may be. But I really admire how he talks about mental health, because that's such a big thing, and it's still quite a taboo subject. Like, really, yes, we're doing well and we're talking about it more, but so much more still needs to be done. And yeah, I love that. And I kind of just thought, do you know, like with the Complete Health Rewire, we're there helping people step out of their comfort zone. I've done so many things this past year that I never would have done before if I wasn't part of the team, like climbing Ben Nevis, still doing a half marathon, not training for it, thanks to Juggy.
Yeah,
so
we heard about that.
Different things. It's always good to go, you'd always go, oh, well, that'd be nice to do, but never have that belief in yourself, really. I feel like Juggy's really made me believe in myself a lot more. And I've noticed every time I've felt uncomfortable and stepped out of that comfort zone, I've only grown from it. So yeah, again, that's with the help of the team, because for years and years and years I was told certain things and made to believe certain things that actually you do need help coming out of that, because I think I'd be stuck where I am otherwise, where I was. But now I have so much more control over things. I feel like I spend my time where I want to spend my time. I'm full of energy. I'm the best mum that I can be for the kids, which was the biggest thing for me growing up. Like that mattered so much to me because of what I went through. I'd never want my kids to experience what I did. So yeah, I think a lot with Juggy helping me just become my own person, and having a voice for myself, and actually just showing that belief in me. I think growing up, no one had that belief in us, and actually just making me realise that how far I have actually come. I remember contacting the social services once, and strangely it was a woman that dealt with our case that picked up the phone, and she could not believe, she was like just in utter shock that I'd got to the point of going to university, let alone everything else that I've achieved after that. But my point is, like, I think you control your own narrative to some extent. You can either be a victim, and I know this isn't easy and it's not the case for everybody, but you can choose how you want to shape your life in some way or another, even if it's just one small thing. And yes, I was incredibly lucky to have met Juggy. And with what we, I think people see what we've got now, but they don't see where we started and how much we've grown together, because we were both young. I was like 19 at the time. Yeah, and we just knew and got married. I remember everyone saying, oh, how do you know he's the one? What if in a year's time you're like, he's not? And now you're married, and what are you going to do? But I think you just know, don't you? But I think, yeah, Juggy's definitely helped me in a lot of different ways. And I hope like the boys just kind of learn and take it in. And I hope the boys always realise like how lucky they are to be in the position that they're in. I don't try and lecture to them, but I kind of do. I think it's really important for them to see like little snippets, or I talk about little things. And actually, I didn't even realise how much it does affect them until one of the mums at the school mentioned something to me. So her son's granddad passed away, and he said, oh, actually I'm quite lucky because Jacob's never met his granddad. That makes me well, sorry. Wow. He's never met his granddad. And he felt like he could speak to Jacob and kind of confide in him. But he also felt really grateful because he was like, actually, I've got memories and experiences with my granddad. So yeah, and I just never knew Jacob had these sort of conversations with his friends. So yeah, we always make it like an open, safe space, things to talk about.
Kids, like you said, kids pick up things, and sometimes we don't realise they do, and they feel comfortable talking to certain people, like you did with his friend.
And I think like people would think, okay, let's not talk about it. They've not brought it up, but I do bring up things from my childhood so that they actually realise like what it was like for me growing up and what it might be like for other children. Like I always say to them, and this doesn't mean I'm like mum of the year. There's always, like, as a mum, you never feel like you're doing enough. But yeah, I always say to them, like, if there's another child at school and something doesn't quite seem right, there might be something going on. And I love, like, with Jacob's teachers, they'll always say to me, oh, this child was crying on the playground, and Jacob was the first one over to them, and he's really good with anyone new that joins, and he's there making them feel welcome. And I think that's, yeah, they just pick up on things, don't they, and learn and know to be there for others.
I think what's beautiful about what you've just said is the fact that any support that anyone can give to anyone makes such a massive difference. And that's come out throughout this whole of this episode, whether it was, the foster carer that took you in, and it's the little things of her trying to learn how to cook certain things, or your mom maybe who took you in, or people throughout your journey, and obviously Juggy and the kids now. But this is something I think all of us need to take on board. Like, we don't realize the impact that we have on other people, and surely we should be trying to have a positive impact, because you never know what someone else is going through.
There's like just reminded me of, we did like a retreat with our members, and one of the exercises was like, how often do you walk down the street and avoid looking at someone in the eyes? If you think about it. So this was
all the time. We're in London. We always avoid everyone. You're like,
look at someone's eyes. When we're going for a walk, we always make the point of actually making eye contact, saying hi, how are you? And then
Taj does that. We were discussing this on one of the episodes, Jussi, and apparently people think she's weird for doing it.
Well, this is the thing. It's not weird, is it? And having conversations with people and actually just listening rather than being reactive, like listening to people and having these conversations. And it's so interesting, like learning about the things that you can learn sometimes from just a complete stranger, but actually just what a difference that makes, that you could have completely changed that person's day. That person might have needed you to. Sounds really corny, but honestly, when you
true,
it makes such a big difference. You see it.
No, Jussi, I completely agree. I don't know, sometimes I feel like I'm going overboard, but I do that every time I walk down the road. I will make sure I have eye contact, say hello, because like you said, you don't know what's going on in someone else's life. You might have been the only person that they've spoken to, I don't know, for weeks, days. So it is important to be open to people, and even a smile is enough sometimes.
Jussi, as we come to the end of this episode, what advice would you give someone that has gone through a very, I don't know, similar? I don't know, again, because I haven't spoken to many people that have been through foster care, which is something that we all need to open our eyes to and raise awareness on. But someone that has been through the foster care system and has had, I don't know if the right term, if saying, a hard time through that process, if they're on the other side of it, what advice would you give them?
Do you know what? Nothing's permanent. Everything's temporary. You can, as bad as the situation may seem, like there is light at the end of the tunnel. Like all these little sayings, all these little things, like find what keeps you going. And, like I said, for me, it was like always knowing that actually, like just being grateful for the little things, because actually there's far worse. Someone's going to be in a far worse situation somewhere in the world. And I think it's just knowing that there is support out there, like now more than ever, like especially with social media and things like that. Like I'm happy for people to reach out to me. There's other organisations out there, like I mentioned, Scarce Fostering, and like just being open to support when it comes to like the mental health side. Like that's a big part of the work that we do. Like that's just part of it, because we realise the importance of that. And I think still, like I don't think a lot of people quite realise. I think they think it's like you're on the verge of a breakdown, but actually it could just be something small, or it could be like managing things or making time for yourself, or various different elements and routes. Just being open to support in whatever shape or form. I think for me, like, and I know a lot of people turn to exercise as an outlet, which can be like great and natural. I'm sure, I know in the past, like when you do go to the doctors, depends on, you might want to cut this bit out. But do you know, like when you go to the doctors and you get someone and they're like, okay, just here, have some medication, I just feel like you are in control of what you do, and there are ways of naturally like supporting yourself and just being open to help. But sorry, coming back to your point, I would say just knowing like nothing's permanent, everything's temporary, and you have control of like shaping your own life, and it's your narrative.
Thank you so much for opening up yourself today and telling us about your journey, because it's something that, like we've said throughout this podcast, we don't talk about enough. So we really appreciate your time today.
No, thank you.
And say hello to Juggy from us as well.
Yes, I will do. Thank you.
That's goodbye from me.
And goodbye from me.
Follow us on Instagram and Facebook, changing_suits, and subscribe so you never miss an episode.